Like if you have clients with food intolerances, what will be your approach?
Okay, so if let's say we have clients with food intolerances, generally, and in fact, this works out for any case in any scenario that is medical per se. Um, in most of our scope of practice, we don't practice anything medical. So food tolerance unfortunately falls under that category too. And so the best thing you can do for a client is to not personally deal with it. Yeah, the best thing you can do for a client is really to refer it to a dietitian, preferably somebody who specializes in dealing with such a case like food intolerance or food sensitivity and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the best possible scenario.
Mm-hmm.
We also understand that sometimes these things don't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So the next best thing that you can likely do, if let's say the likely scenario happens, right? What happens is that you, the fitness trainer or the nutritionist, will play the role of the support instead of the front line. And so you will take in, you will go together perhaps with your client to understand the food intolerance situation. Perhaps it's an allergy, perhaps it's a celiac disease of sort, maybe gluten sensitivity and stuff like that. But because you are not, or rather even I myself, we are not trained to deal with such a specific situation,
Mm-hmm.
the next best thing we can do is really to share and to refer them to somebody who is already trained in something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and then play a support role of doing what you can do next in terms of holding them accountable, um, taking care of their dietary needs according to the recommendations of the dietitian, and stuff like that. So that's possibly one thing that I would do if
Mm-hmm.
let's say we know that such and such a situation is a rather serious one.
Mm-hmm.
So if let's say the situation now is my client already know that he or she cannot take such food. Maybe that person is totally unable to tolerate dairy, and the person says that, you know what, if I take dairy, and what happens next is that I will immediately feel like I need to go to the toilet 24/7, and I will just burst my intestines out. Then the next best thing you can do is basically just avoid it altogether and look for better alternatives. If let's say there are no such alternative, then that's where we talk about weighing of like whether we should start using supplements as a guide to help them take in certain nutrients, like for example calcium from milk or dairy that they might not be able to process directly because of their lactose intolerance, or because they might have certain allergies to certain nutrients within the food. Yeah, then that's where we talk about like, okay, perhaps we need to bring in supplementation to take care of certain nutrients that are important for them, like maybe iron or little things like that. Yeah, so that's probably one of the few ways that I would deal with food intolerant situation of my clients.
Mm-hmm. So actually, you did actually jump to the supplement part, which we're going to talk about it next, right? I guess
Yeah.
it does make sense because if you am I speaking too fast and the recording is like not recording while I'm talking?
No,
Okay.
it's not you speaking too fast. It's just your bandwidth.
Your internet
Okay.
connection is not at its best today.
Yeah.
Okay, so
It's feeling sick.
let's talk slowly. So you brought up the point of using the supplement and its role in such situation,
Yeah.
because if you have certain allergy or intolerance of food, so I think that you are actually reducing the difference from what the provides. By adding a calcium supplement will actually aid to actually improve the profile, or the micronutrient profile of the person, just in that particular age. So what about taste? If I were to take lactase together with my meal, would that problem the end?
Okay, do I have to say? Okay, I'll come out. So if what supplement recommendations would you recommend? And let's just say, for example, if someone is lactose intolerant, which I am lactose intolerant, dairy intolerant, and also egg intolerant. So If let's say you are lactose intolerant and the person still wants to take like a dairy supplement, do you even recommend supplements, or what do you usually do?
Okay, so I think as far as supplement goes, uh, I have a food first approach, and so we obviously need to make sure that as far as the story of supplement goes, food has to come in first, lah. Mainly because there are many things within the world of nutrition that we don't understand enough to say that we can eliminate it altogether and just use supplements, and also because supplements at the end of the day is serving the purpose of being a complementary to what you're eating rather than the other way around. So that's something that we probably have to be crystal clear about. Now, when we talk about, if let's say now, for example, Melvin, you say that maybe you are, lactose intolerant, but you still need to take something that comes from dairy, for example, because the protein levels are higher, because the vitamin levels inside there are slightly higher. Do we need a supplementation? Probably. Thankfully, in the industry right now, there are a lot of low lactose-based dairy products. For example, the whey protein industry has reached a point where they actually isolate a lot of fats and carbohydrates from their dairy product to give you pure proteins. So that's one place that you can kind of get the proteins without the lactose. If let's say you're talking about calcium and dairy-based stuff like calcium, vitamin D, and stuff like that, then normally you might be able to find a food-based substitute to deal with that particular nutrient. Yeah. So those are a few ways that I'll probably look at, like how to deal with the supplementation issue itself. Yeah. Then of course, if you say that something like eggs might be a bit harder in the sense where when we're talking about eggs, you might be looking mainly at B12. And the reason why B12 is important is because it protects the nervous system of our body. By having this B12, you kind of improve the nervous system's shield guarding kind of a situation. So it's called myelin shield in the nervous system, but what it really does is that it protects the nervous system from damages. Without B12, you are unable to produce the required material in the body to protect your myelin shield. And so what happens is that your train of thought might start to become a bit slower, like how Calvin's internet is today. And so that's one of the few things that might be a bit harder to deal with. And so in that situation, then we might want to consider, okay, do we want to get a B complex altogether? Because then we get some B12 out of it together. Yeah, so for specific food like that, then it's a bit harder to find a direct substitute. Then yes, we want to get supplement in. Yeah. But one thing to bear in mind when we're talking about micronutrient and supplementation is that not all supplements are built the same. What I mean by that is that even though you might be able to buy specific supplements for specific nutrients at this point, you may not be able to get the same amount of absorption level as you get from food, and vice versa. So some of these food, they might say, okay, I can get it from supplements. For example, I think like iron, and iron's probably one of the bigger and more significant ones that people would actually want or would need to take supplementation. But the ability for your body to absorb it from iron pill versus the ability for your body to absorb it from food, it's way lower. And therefore, whenever possible, we try to go and use a food source. Yeah, so those are some of the things that we do want to consider. And at the end of the day, if you think that you have a big reason for supplementation, for example, you think that you are really lacking in a certain nutrient, my biggest and most important advice is to not go ahead and just buy the supplement straight up. Consider doing a blood test first. Because if you were to buy a supplement now, it's like saying, I'm going to buy an insurance policy that I do not need just because I think that I need it. Then what you're doing is really just spending money that might have been better used for testing out whether you have that problem first or not, before you create the solution for that particular problem. In fact, if you were to do a blood test first, Singapore is a very safe place to do so because your doctors will already be ready with the nutrients that is required for you to kind of top up, and therefore saving you extra money instead of buying a large dose of supplements on a subscription basis per se. So that's one thing to also consider when you're considering, do I need supplements? Because these are things that from a health point of view, we might actually have a ready solution at the pharmaceutical level. Yeah. So that is as far as health goes lah. Do we want to talk about the sports part of story?
So, I mean, just as another part of the to add in the supplement, right? So let's just say, for example, that would you recommend supplements to like people on specific diets? So let's just say, for example, so most likely vegans will be missing out in B vitamins, right?
Yeah.
And then if let's just say somebody with you, let's just say somebody specifically wants to do a carnivore diet. So would you recommend a multivitamin as just to top up deficiencies, or what would your recommendations be if, for example, you have scenarios like that?
I would actually. So how I would do it is I would play the very specific role. Let's say, for example, a person who comes in today, he is very new, he hasn't been eating well, he obviously looking at his food diary, you know that he is basically lacking in all sorts of supplements. Then yes, I would consider, okay, why don't you go and get yourself, number one, a multivitamin, number two, perhaps a probiotic, and number three, definitely omega-3 oil. Because these are basic foundations that most people in their diet do not have enough of. And so what we are doing in this scenario, right, is that we know that this person, based on his food diary, already do not have enough of certain supplements or certain certain micro minerals and micro vitamins. So in that manner, then we want to kind of top up that lack first, but we don't want them to depend on it. As we are topping that part of the story up. So let's say, for example, you were saying that vegans, they might lack in certain nutrients, right? The more significant ones are iron lah. I think vitamin B still okay because they have a good amount of green leafy vegetables, unless they are the vegans who really love carbs but they don't like plants, which is actually quite common, more common than we actually think. So then, in that scenario, we do want to top up the supplements and the multivitamins that we think that they may need that they don't have at this point. And as we are topping that up, we also want to improve their food status so that they don't need to depend on the supplements on the long run. So one thing that I do with multivitamins, right, is how I usually do it is I would do a loading protocol. What that means is that maybe I would get them to buy one bottle, finish it up in maybe 1 to 3 months, and then I'll tell them, okay, at this point we don't need any more multivitamins because ultimately I'm not trying to overload their system with multivitamins. I'm trying to potentially fill up the gaps of what might already be missing, and then continue to bridge those gaps with food itself, so that we don't teach them to depend on what they do not need to depend on, and instead absorb nutrients from a better resource altogether while learning good food habits and building good relationship with them.
Okay. So from what you mentioned, like, is there certain supplements that you would recommend, or like out of your top 5, do you have certain like recommendations for like supplements like that, or even for sports? Let's say, for example, let's just say you have athletes, let's just say, or like people doing resistance training, right? So sometimes they may need certain requirements more. Let's say they may need higher levels of magnesium, they may need higher levels of this. Do you have like for someone that actively does resistance training, I guess, like what are the supplements? Do you have any supplements that you would recommend? Just in general.
Honestly, no, because the reason why no in my case is because for my main business model, we look at a very individualized direction. What that means is that we don't really recommend supplements as a blanket protocol. in fact, how we do it is we really look into the food diary and the needs and requirements of the sport that they might be doing. So, for example, when I work with my horseback rider versus when I work with my basketball player, one sport is a long endurance sport, the other sport is a intermittent sport where they have a lot of high paced movement and then a lot of rest in between, but yet the same time still moving. So the way we deal with the energy demands and the stress demands of these different sports is quite different in that manner. And so um, unfortunately, it doesn't make sense for my type of business to play a blanket protocol to kind of recommend a top five. Yeah, but there are certain specific things that some of my clients would really use, and they are quite common lah. Yeah. So the most common one within the sports scene obviously is protein. The reason why is because even though protein is a macronutrient and you can get it from food, the amount of protein per gram per kg a person needs sometimes is way too high for them to get it purely by food. So Melvin and Kelvin, I think both of you will probably relate quite directly to what I'm saying at this point, where sometimes you need to eat so much protein that you're like, okay, actually I probably don't want to eat like 2 kg of meat just to get the amount of protein that I need. Yeah.
I will eat. I will eat.
But if it's like hard-boiled chicken breast, it gets very hard for some people. Yeah, in fact, even if you give them chicken thigh or you give them steak, it still gets very difficult for some people. They can't swallow because over time the texture is just too tough for them to eat. And the other thing is also considering the timeline that they have. They may not have that kind of time to eat so much protein. Yeah. So maybe for you, special case like you get to eat. Yeah, I would enjoy a good steak with you. That's for sure.
The one I had problem with was trying to finish 1 kg of broccoli in a day. You're like, oh, the minute you open the container, you're like, oh.
Let me introduce you to the blender.
Yeah. After every time I eat like 300 grams wasteful, I'm like, I cannot do this anymore.
Yeah. So if you get cauliflower and you blend it, it's a lot easier to drink. It tastes like mashed potato.
That was my business idea, to have cauliflower rice, but then like it didn't go anywhere.
It's okay. There are many other places to go by. But some people, they just can't eat that kind of that kind of volume per se. And so then protein becomes a supplementation that as you can tell, within the supplement industry has boomed into a multi-billion-dollar product. So that's the most common product that most of the athletes will end up using. It's a quite clear direction like in that case. In a sports scenario, I play quite a different role where I do look at like microvitamins and stuff like that, but sometimes we really do a bit of a blanket of doing multivitamins when they need it. If let's say they have specific issues like sleep and stress, then that's where we start looking, okay, do you need magnesium? Do you perhaps need what are the other supplements? Yeah, omega-3s and stuff like that. Then that's where we look at specific stress and sleep issues. Then we kind of blanket that protocol with a little bit of recommendation. If let's say we are talking about a sports-based scenario, then sometimes the long distance athletes, they will need to bring along a carbohydrate supplement. For example, my athletes, they easily can go from as little as 3 hours, which is not very little, all the way up to 18 hours of long distance running. In that case, then they need a constant supply of nutrients, and some of them, they run very high pace heart rate, so they need a lot of carbohydrate. Then in that case, then we will consider recommending gels and such to help them to recover a bit faster so that they can continue running long and not feel too fatigued over time. One of our most common supplement that is recommended, whether you are an athlete or not, is caffeine. And the reason is because everybody needs to wake up before they start moving. Yeah. So caffeine has become quite a popular common item for many of my clients. we don't really recommend so much on like main little supplements, like for example, beta-alanine, BCAA, EAA, in fact, even like magnesiums and stuff like that. We try not to bring that in. At least for the first 3 to 6 months of my clients, they hardly hear me recommending something like that, mainly because we really work on their foundation of the food first. If we can settle their foundation with food and we can improve their energy level, recovery, and the basics of what they need in terms of the type of food that they need and the quality of the food that they need, then there is almost no reason for us to bring in a supplement. Only when we start saying that, okay, maybe the person's training load is getting very high, then maybe we'll consider, okay, perhaps the pH level of this person might be getting higher. So we might bring in something like baking soda, or we might bring in something like beta-alanine to kind of reduce the pH levels and therefore allow them to recover faster and train a bit harder. Let's say the person is a strength or power athlete and they say that I'm going to move to the next level, then we might bring in creatine and we'll consider the creatine load protocol according to the speed of improvement we need for the client to receive. So those are a few examples that you would consider from a individualized approach. Yeah, but we try not to work on a recommendation top 5 approach, mainly because it's a bit hard when you're working with different sports and different athletes. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Kelvin, yes.
Cool.
Do you?
Cool. Is my connection back again?
You can try.
You can
No, I
try.
just want to. Well, before I got cut, I don't know. Maybe the Wi-Fi hit me today. So before I got cut off, right? I'm asking, instead of just like, because there are also other supplements like enzyme out there, for example, lactase for lactose intolerance, right? So instead of like, because, you're not taking dairy products, right? And then we just okay, supplements. What about the enzyme? So I can continue enjoying my dairy products, but just with the enzyme added to my meals. Would it be ways that I look into?
Okay, I think the summary of that is, let's say you are
Okay,
lacking.
I'm dead again.
Let's say you are lacking the enzymes to
Right.
for the certain foods, right?
Right.
That's the only part I got. So I assume it's like, if you lack the enzymes for the food, would you recommend, let's say if people, let's just general recommendations. So you recommend, like, if somebody wants to eat dairy, to have the lactase supplement with their dairy products? I assume that's what he wanted to ask.
I think that's what he was trying to ask also. My answer to that is unfortunately the same as my first answer.
Okay.
Go back to your dietitian and check with them.
Okay.
Because that's not within my scope of practice to begin with, but also
Okay.
because you don't know what's going on with the body, and sometimes you need tests to understand what the body is lacking and why is it not processing your dairy in the way the normal human being might process dairy.
Okay.
So it doesn't make sense to just recommend an enzyme or a probiotic according to the lack, so that they can reprocess it. If something else is going on inside the body, it's hard to tell just by doing a blanket recommendation like that. Yeah. So in the end, I would still recommend to either go to a doctor or go to a dietitian to kind of work with them and find out what is going on. Yeah.
Okay.
I do have cases where I actually recommend clients to endocrinology, doctors, blood test results, even dietitians. And so what we do is we really dig a bit deeper. I guess the big answer here is really to make sure that you're testing and not guessing. And so when you bother to test, you know what's going on, and then you create a custom-made solution that is built on sound evidence-based recommendation. Number one, that doesn't only create a better solution for your client. It also kind of allow the client to feel like I'm being cared for, which is probably what's more important at this point. Yeah. So that test don't guess mentality would probably help the client over time, because they know what really is going on within the body, and they know that perhaps in this scenario they may not actually need to depend on a supplement or an enzyme of sorts.
Right. To help, right? Let's since you mentioned, can you give the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist, like a sports nutritionist, like you, and then versus a dietitian? What's the difference?
Cool. I guess in that case, we need a few categories.
Okay.
So with regards to what a nutritionist is, if you're talking about human nutrition, they are trained to take care of you and when you are sick. So let's say, for example, you have something like, IBS, Alzheimer's, the things like that. Okay, maybe that one's more towards dietitian. So what a dietitian will be able to do, right, is to look at your medical case scenario, understand where you are at that point. They might need to do certain tests that is very hospital-based or medical-based to find out more about what is going on in your body, and then they can give you a recommendation. Nutritionists, they are more trained towards taking care of you as a human. So they are trained to understand the macros and the micros, and they are trained to help you to lead a better sedentary lifestyle or lead a better lifestyle as an active individual. Sports nutritionist, which is myself, is trained to deal with more performance-based scenarios where, let's say today you say that, I want to lift 10 kg heavier and I want to recover fast and I want to perform well during my training. Then something like that would be where I come in and talk about like how to use food to better improve your performance. Yeah. But the common thing between all three of us is that we usually use a very food-first approach and we consider how you can achieve your goals using that, mainly because of how food is at this point versus where technology is in terms of nutrition. Yeah, so that's where we kind of interline each other. The big difference is really that a dietitian plays a more medical role, whereas a sports nutritionist play a more performance role per se.
Okay. I'm gonna ask you a few more questions, but Kelvin, if you want to ask any question, you message me so that since the internet connection stopped working for you today, you message me then in the chat group, and then I ask. Then now that way it's easier. Okay, so
I'm just sitting here of you.
I don't know what you say also, but yeah, but this is how I feel. Okay, so since we what would you say is the best like diet? What was his question? Okay, so what's a good like in being in Asia, based in Asia, like like most of the time ketogenic dietary plans are not recommended because it's so easy to find carbohydrate-based foods, right? So like, will you have any recommendations on how to make a sustainable nutritional plan, or like your definition of what is a good sustainable plan, or how to make one, something like that?
Cool. I think that's a very fair question. We do have a lot more good food in our kitchen, in fact, in our country compared to many others. In fact, we have too many multiracial food, which is a good and bad thing. When we talk about trying to create something sustainable for anybody, the number one rule, I guess, is to make sure that you actually enjoy it. You have fun actually eating what you are trying to eat. Yeah, a lot of us, we like to consider going straight down into a meal plan. And what happens with that when you actually try and buy a meal plan from a nutritionist is that you might realize that you are trying to create a 180-degree change to your own lifestyle, which may not be sustainable altogether. One thing that you can actually consider is, why don't you look at what you generally like to eat and then substitute some of the food that's already inside there with something of a better nutrient quality. So for example, maybe you are your 9-to-5 office worker and what you really love is Cai Peng. Then can you consider maybe eating like one fistful of rice, but you get a lot more vegetables, and maybe you get a non-fried chicken or non-fried meat. So that way you get a little bit more balance, because you have not changed the culture that you're eating. All you did is you changed the quality or the quantity of the food that you're eating. So that's one way to play around with the food. One thing that I actually do a lot with my clients is to create a shopping list with them. And this shopping list is actually custom and personalized towards their preference. So how that works out is that I would categorize their food according to the roles of these food. For example, if they say that if I think that they need protein, then we have a blanket of like fish, lobster, seafood, little things like that. Yeah, and then let's say they say that they don't like vegetables, but I would have a list of vegetables that they might already be ready or tolerable to eat. So then from there they would know, okay, these are the food groups that I can start working with as a foundation. And from this foundation, all they need to do is to mix and match a bunch of nutrients together that they are willing to eat into a plate. And unfortunately, this takes some time. But over time, as they start to explore for more foundation food, they realize that there are a lot more food that they can enjoy that is in a sustainable, healthy, beneficial way for them. And you can do the same for yourself too, because all you need to do is to figure out, number one, what are the main nutrients that you need to hit your fitness goals. For some of you might be saying that I need more carbs, and maybe you don't like carbs. Maybe you prefer protein. Then what are carbs that you're willing to eat? For most of us, we just eat rice. We don't mind, but you might be different. For some of you, you might be thinking, I don't eat vegetables at first. I don't really like it at all. I have an issue with it. So then, are you willing to eat your vegetables if we marinate it with herbs and spices? Or if we cook it with soy sauce, or if we basically just blend the whole thing because you don't like the texture? So those are ways that we would work with the food to make sure that you are a bit more palatable towards it. Yeah. So those are little things that we might consider to kind of improve the nutrition status of your food. Yeah. But of course, that boils down to the next question of I don't have time, what do I do next? And thankfully, in the market right now, we have a lot of healthy food outside of the kitchen. So it's a lot easier to plan your food compared to in the past. The grain bowl business has basically exploded into probably by the millions by now. So you really have a lot of food, even on like Deliveroo and Grab food, to actually choose that are still healthy for you. Yeah, in fact, if you use Burple, you get like 1 for 1 for a lot of these products too. So it works out.
Yeah, food delivery has increased people's weight.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go out and buy, right? You're like downstairs or like a few hundred meters away. No car.
Yeah.
Okay, so we actually have a question. So, can you tell us what's the difference between like glycemic load and glycemic index, or do we Google that information?
I think Googling is a lot easier for you than for me to explain, but I'll try to put it into some simple terms lah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we talk about glycemic index, we are looking at how digestible a food is. For most people, we will look at glycemic index in terms of carbohydrate. It actually works out for all types of food inside the body. What happens is that if let's say the glycemic index of the food is very high, you probably will tend to have a higher level of sugar or blood sugar for a while, and then you crash. So a lot of people who actually take high glycemic index based food like white rice, sugary drinks, bubble tea, they tend to feel tired faster after lunch. They might also tend to feel hungrier faster, mainly because most of these food are not very satiable. So therefore, it's not very hunger killing. Yeah. So that is what glycemic index does. It basically scales on the food digestion level. Yeah. So it's usually on a scale of 1 to 100. Glycemic load is specific to the food itself. Where now you're looking at number 1, the glycemic index of the food, and number 2, the portion size of the food. When you add them together, you get a set number, and this number determines where, or rather how fast the digestion of that food is, and how likely you are to absorb too much and therefore crash. One of the blanket rule that a lot of people would say is, you know, if I take brown rice, I will probably be able to receive a more sustainable energy over time. But what they are not looking at is that if I take, you know, 3 big bowls of brown rice, will I crash after that or not? So that's where glycemic load comes in and become a bit more important. I won't go in too much about the calculation really because that's math lah, but the general understanding of it is like this. So at least now you know, if let's say I'm going to eat a bowl of, you know, low GI food, it doesn't mean I can eat more. It just means that if I eat the same amount of low GI versus high GI, that potential for crash for low GI is lower because of how the glycemic load works.
Okay. And then to add to that, like fiber and fats also can change the glycemic index of the food, right?
Correct. Protein also can, fat also can.
So
yeah.
So you can have ice cream at a low GI but high calories. Would I say that?
You can have ice cream at a low GI, high calorie, and your blood sugar will not be affected directly, but your body composition probably will. Yeah.
Does that answer the question, Kelvin? Never mind. While he typing. Okay. So to summarize like that, right, since we're gonna answer, like, what are you think are like the 5 things that people can, or like people in Singapore or dieting, whatever, that can do better to improve their weight loss goals? Let's just say example of that first.
The very first and foremost thing is probably to eat slowly. This all just top of my head because to be fair, these are not questions that we actually prepared beforehand. The first thing is definitely to eat slowly. People nowadays, they are too busy. They bring their stress along to their food, and therefore they eat very fast. When they eat very fast, they also swallow up too fast. They tend to feel hungry faster, and the food doesn't digest in their body fast enough. There's also a likelihood for them to eat more calories just because they're eating too fast. So definitely eat slowly and just stop when you feel like you're fine. Yeah, you usually don't eat all the calories that you're probably eating. The second thing I feel that they can do better really is to just make sure they're eating a lot more vegetables than they are right now. If you look at the general food of our composition, you realize that, you know, basically the whole plate is just carbohydrates. You hardly see a lot of other nutrients. You might see like maybe like here and there some protein, probably like a meat or two, but most of it is just carbohydrate. I think what you can probably do the best is to really just cut that meal into half and then add in a buttload of vegetables along with that meal. So you kind of enjoy what you're eating, at the same time you still get volume. So that's probably what I can think of that will work out quite nicely. If you are going to snack, and you will snack, I mean, even I snack, then I would suggest choosing something that is a bit higher in protein, mainly because you can chew longer, you can stay hungry lower, and there's a chance that the protein that you eat will be processed for better usage after that compared to the carbs and the fats that will just be stored in your body. Yeah, so that's probably something to consider. If you are going to be exercising, then eat your nutrients around there. Yeah, that's probably the smartest thing to do in terms of performance that will help in your number 1 active lifestyle goal, number 2 your long-term hunger situation. What happens for most of us is that we kind of have a balanced diet throughout the day, but we may not be fueling our food enough for during the exercise, before or after. What happens in that scenario is that you either become too hungry or you become too underfueled. Yeah, so that's probably something to also consider. I don't think I have an immediate number 5. Oh, move more. Definitely move more. Yeah. Well, nutrition can only do so much, but at the end of the day, the whole way how somebody is trying to lose weight has to combine nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle. So some people exercise, some people move, but some people exercise and eat, but they don't move enough. So they feel like they are in a very stuck zone because they are doing the right things, but they may not actually be doing enough of the right things to create that change per se. So something to consider is really to just make sure that you're moving, because it's such a low calorie situation. You can do it for long hours, and you probably don't need to rest per se over time. Yeah. To move more is more sustainable and tend to exercise more because it's a lower impact item. So that's something to also consider, I would say. Yeah.
Okay.